Hello and welcome to Break Check. Today we are going to be talking about the European Regional number 2 for the winter split. So without wasting any time, let's just go ahead and jump straight into it. We're going to talk about groups up front and just talk a little bit about how groups unfolded and what we expected to see versus what we saw and all that good stuff. So as we know with Europe, it's a region full of chaos. I would say that chaos is normalcy there. There are obviously a ton of competitive teams, even down into the 12 to 20 range. And we just see a wide variety of results from these different teams. So moving into the winter split, there was a couple changes made on the lower end of the European ladder. A couple players swapped places here and there. And I think it has made some of those teams a little bit stronger and even more threatening for those top 8 to 10 squads in Europe. So anyways, we'll look at these groups real quick. A, BDS, Guild, Luminosity, and Williams Resolve. In my opinion, this is a very stacked group. This honestly could have gone any way. Guild was the team that I had the least faith in because they added CRR to the roster in between fall and winter, and we just hadn't seen a ton of them just yet. We hadn't really seen anything. They didn't make the first regional, and so I don't know. I definitely didn't expect them to come out second place in the group, so nice, well done there. But this is, like I said at the beginning, this is what we expect from Europe. You know, it is what it is. We don't know what's going to happen. Resolve is another team that it's so funny. I honestly think that I am kind of like a jinx, or like whatever I say, the opposite's going to happen. So for Williams Resolve, you know, they've started to consistently get into this area of like sometimes poking up into the top 7, 6 area, but have established themselves as no lower than like a top 10 team, maybe top 11 or 12 at the lowest. And it's, of course, as soon as I open my mouth, here they go. You know, I start to give them credit. Here they go. They end up getting knocked out in groups. You know, it's just what it is. So anyways, there's Williams Resolve getting knocked out. We did have tiebreaker matches for the first place and for last place as well in Group A. So BDS and Guild, they were fighting for first place. BDS takes that. Luminosity had to fend off elimination from Resolve, and they did that easily with the 3-0. So we look at Group B here. We've got Evil Geniuses, Endpoint, K-Corp, Stormtroopers. We are all just waiting. We are waiting and waiting and waiting for Carmine Corp, however I say it, to show us something even remotely close to their potential. They have so much talent. They are so incredibly skilled. If you look at the star power on that roster, I'm telling you, that's a good team, and I don't understand why they just can't make it work. And so, I don't know. We'll just keep waiting, I guess. Stormtroopers, that's a fun roster. I don't mean this in a negative manner, but this is kind of just the leftovers at the moment. Dead Monster ended up left off his team of Na'Vi. Though was left off, I guess, multiple teams at this point. Most recently, I think it was Guild. And then Assalam was left off his team as well. And so those three get together, form Stormtroopers. I think that's a really good team too. If they'll stick together, I imagine they'll continue to perform better and better as time goes on. In fact, they almost made it out of groups. They end up getting beaten by K-Corp in the last match there. The last game of the tiebreaker for last place here. So they almost made it through groups. But like I said, keep an eye on Stormtroopers. I think it's a good team. Let's look at Group C here. We got Misfits, Dig, 00 Nation, and Team Vitality. And oh my goodness. First off, just like I was saying before, I start talking about 00 Nation. And I say, you know, they've done okay, but nothing super impressive, so I don't expect them to make it out of groups. And then, again, what do? I jinx it. Anything I say is bound to become not true. So 00 Nation played really well through group stage, and Vitality just couldn't get it together. And on top of that, I also said this is probably going to be the group where no one has any doubts, and Dig is going to take it 3-0. And, of course, that's not what happens. I say before the event, Misfits is a team that has been trending in the upward direction, and then they just kind of stalled out. They plateaued, and they haven't really been moving up. In fact, after, I hate to say it this way, but choking the spot in the fall major, they've been fairly meh, right? Like Misfits hasn't been great. And as soon as I come to that conclusion, boom, they come out of the gate 3-0 in groups, and they start playing well in playoffs. So, you know, if you all are betting people, come to my stream, listen to what I say, and then bet on the opposite, because that is almost guaranteed to happen. Let's look at Group D. We got Queso, Semper, Na'Vi, and Cooksters. In my opinion, this is probably the the weakest group. Maybe, I don't know. Cookster's Minions, they've kind of established themselves as a top 16 level team. They continue to make regional after regional, but are not super impressive once they get in it. They've done okay a couple times, but we still need to see some more out of them before we give them too much praise. Na'Vi, I'm glad that they didn't have internet issues this time, and this is about where I expect them to land. I think they're probably going to experience some growing pains for a little bit, adding Virtuoso, but they're a pretty good team, and we'll see how they continue to perform. Semper, on the other hand, I'm glad that they ended up in the second seed here. They needed some points in this second regional if they wanted any chance to make the major. So this is a good showing in groups, but we'll look at a little bit more of them when we get into playoffs. Semper is just not, they're not clicking right now in the winter. And then Team Queso just steamrolling along through, 3-0 through their group. So we got a tiebreak. Oh, no tiebreakers, actually. No tiebreakers. So we got Group D with Queso on top. So we got BDS, EG, Misfits, and Queso as our top 4 seeds that are going to make it into the upper bracket. All right? So let's go ahead and move on to playoffs and talk a little bit about that. Group stage had a couple of shakeups. Playoffs had a little bit more shakeups, but as we got deeper into the playoff bracket, Europe kind of stuck to the script a little bit more than they normally do. I think we mostly had pretty predictable results after kind of lower quarterfinal. When we get into lower semifinal and on, I think it's fairly, it's kind of what people probably expected. But we'll look down here. We got Luminosity taking down Endpoint, and I do think that's an upset, but by no means is it shocking. Luminosity is a great team. They've had some really tough draws in the winter split. I am sad to see Endpoint just, I don't want to say falling off, but they're definitely not performing the way they were in the fall. So, I would love to see Endpoint turn it around. Obviously a great team. I love that team is just like they just focus really hard on mentality, right? Like they've got a good attitude, and I love to see teams like that succeed. So I want to see them turn things around. Dig over Na'Vi, no surprise. 3-0, good performance from Dig. This is what they need to be doing. Dignitas is a team that obviously has very high highs, but I also think there's some variation there. They have some lows as well. The crazy thing about Dig is even when they're sloppy and they're not playing well, they still get wins. So, I think Dig's in a good place, but this is what we want to see from them to just handily beat the teams that they're supposed to beat. Then we got Guild taking down K-Corp. You could say this is a surprise. I mean, I guess that's probably a surprise. I think it's definitely an upset at the very least when you're looking at points for the European region. So, good job to Guild. Congratulations to them. But K-Corp, again, like I said earlier, we're just waiting. I mean, we're just waiting. I have not lost complete hope. I have not lost faith. I think they're a great team. I think they can put together a much better performance than they're showing right now. But we got to see it. I mean, when's it going to happen? We're about halfway through the season now, and it's like, eventually got to turn it around. And then we do have I would say this is a big surprise here, and I know Semper hasn't been performing well, but getting 3-0'd by 0-0 Nation is not good. This is not good. And this result right here is Semper, almost guaranteeing that they're not going to make the major. This has been 2 very tough regionals for Semper, and it's not looking good. It's not looking good. Now, I will say, before we get too far into the discussion, missing out on a single major is not going to end your season by any means, but it is going to make it a lot more difficult. So Semper, they need to start turning things around as soon as possible. Even just taking points in this third regional and building towards that world championship points total, they need to do it. So hopefully Semper can turn things around. Lower round 2, we got the classic Luminosity Dig matchup. Poor Luminosity has run into Dig every single time. They lost to they were in the Dig. They lost to Dig in the lower part of the bracket. I think round 1 last regional. And now they run into them again in round 2 and almost take them down. They go to game 5. And they were playing well. This is a great series. If you did not see this, definitely go check it out. It's a good series. But Dignitas ends up getting the better of them in lower round 2. Guild takes down 0-0 Nation in lower round 2 as well. This goes to game 5. And again, we look at these two teams, and this is not really what you're expecting down here. But this is kind of what Europe does. So there it is. We go to Uppy Simmer. Upper semi. We got BDS Queso. BDS gets the better of them this time. Moves on to upper bracket final. EG 4-0. Misfits. Hello. EG come to play. EG looked really, really solid in this matchup specifically. They look pretty good in groups as well. And EG is the German Amigos roster from the offseason. who had like a very spectacular showing in the offseason. And for me, like it just feels like long-term, they're just continuing to build on that success. They've got a great foundation, and I think that team has a bright future, so they just need to keep plugging along. So Misfits and Queso get knocked to lowers. Queso ends up, again, taking down Dignitas. At the moment, Queso seems to have the upper hand. Earlier on in the 21-22 season, throughout the fall, Dig kind of had the upper hand, but they did go back and forth. A lot of game fives from these teams in like Swiss stage and stuff. So these two teams kind of go back and forth, but it looks like Queso's got the better of them as of lately. Misfits and Guild go to game 7. And I'm going to tell you, we're going to watch this series later on stream. I can't wait to watch this. It was an incredible series, and I love to see both of these teams kind of stepping things up here in this regional. And then, again, Misfits going to game 7 with Team Queso in the following lower semifinal. And Queso ends up getting the better of them. This was a very, very exciting match to watch, back and forth. Both teams played pretty well. It wasn't a lot of just mistakes and capitalizing on mistakes. Both teams were kind of punishing or creating opportunities and then punishing whenever they were presented with a chance. So this was a good matchup as well. And we got EG and Queso again. Queso in game 7. I mean, goodness gracious. Look at these guys. They're running the gauntlet. So shouts to Queso. And then they get into grand final. And one thing I do want to note here is that Queso locked qualification for Winter Major. I'm sorry, I drew a blank there. In, I think, this round? Maybe this round. I can't remember. They locked it down here in lowers. I can't remember exactly when. But that may have had kind of an impact on how focused they were and how just in the zone that they are when we get into this finals. On top of that, though, I do want to say BDS was playing really, really well. We look at this 4 in the upper bracket final against EG. Again, EG has been looking pretty good. And then we got a 4-0 here in Queso, against Queso in the final. And so that's going to bring us to our next topic. Is BDS back to form? Well, I don't know. I don't know. I think they look really good. And the thing is, when we say BDS back to form, it's I feel like there's a little bit more nuance to it than like, so if BDS is back to form, I don't think that automatically means that they're going to absolutely dominate the region like they did in RLCSX. All right. So even if BDS are performing at their peak, I hate that word because I don't know. If BDS is just performing at some of the highest level that they can compete at, I don't think that indicates that they're head and shoulders above everyone like they were in the previous season. I think BDS can be in form and they can still be taken to game 7s. They can still be beaten. I think some of these other teams are going to have to, they're going to have to bring their A game and they're going to have to be on form as well. But I don't think BDS is this team that's untouchable anymore. And I don't think they've come down by any means. I don't think their performance is worse. I just think that a lot of the other European teams have kind of caught up to that level. And I do feel as though BDS still has the lead on everyone. They still got the edge. They're still a very fantastic team. The way that they work together as a unit is seriously mind-blowing at times. Suffocating pressure. They're just phenomenal finishing. Just a really good team. They work so well together. So is BDS back to form? I think they are. But I don't think that means that they're untouchable. I think that's what I'm going to conclude. BDS are probably back to form. They seem like they're performing really well. It kind of felt like for a while they had a target on there from everyone, and then they ended up starting to, I don't know if that pressure got to them or whatever, they ended up losing the RLCSX season championship to Vitality, and then they struggled to get things moving in the fall split of this season. And then finally, when they got that major win, the fall major win, it felt like that kind of took some pressure off. They performed pretty well in the first regional for the winter split, and now they finally got that elusive regional win. So I'm excited for BDS, and I hope this better performances, more consistent performances long-term from them. So the next thing that we want to look at, I want to look at some rankings here for Europe in the winter, and we kind of have an idea, just glance at who is likely to make the major. So we got total points here throughout the winter. And again, Europe is going to have 5 spots. So these two teams in green, these two have already locked their spots. So Queso and BDS are going to be there. 651, 611. All right. Our next 3 in line are Dig, EG, and Endpoint. I will say that I feel confident about Dignitas. I feel confident that they will perform to a level that will grant them enough points to remain in the top 5. They may not have a top 4 finish, in this final winter regional, but I'm confident that Dig will be there. So I will say, my own perspective, my own opinion, I will say Dignitas is pretty much locked as well. So we've got last 2 spots here, and Evil Geniuses, they are trending the right direction. They are doing the things that they need to do, but we have seen some inconsistency over the whole scale of the season. So, I would be led to believe that EG is going to perform well enough in this last regional that they'll lock in a top 5, but I'm not that confident. A little bit different than Dig because we've seen Dig perform over a long period of time. So EG, while they're in prime position, I'm not 100% confident in them. Endpoint, same thing. They're in a great position, but you just don't know. We don't know what's going to happen over here. There's so much volatility in Europe, and these teams down here are plenty strong. I mean, look at this. These teams down here are plenty strong enough to smack some of these teams out of position. So, I don't know. We got Misfits. Misfits looked a lot better in this most recent regional. And like I said earlier in the podcast, this comes off the back of me kind of criticizing them, saying that they haven't looked very good. We've also got K-Corp, who is just honestly like they're a wild card. An absolute joker. Like, you have no idea what's going to happen. K-Corp, I still genuinely believe that if they will just bring their A game, they could pop off and just win a regional. Like, they could just smoke everybody. But we haven't seen it yet. So, I don't know. Luminosity Gaming, a relatively new contender, I'll say. They've added a new player to their roster, but a new contender at the very least. And I mean, who knows? They could pop off. Vitality, I have less faith in. I just don't see the potential to punch up, or as much potential. But again, you just can't write Vitality off. They've just got that legacy status. They've been there before. They've had their backs against the wall. We saw them do it in the fall. I mean, I don't know how they pulled it off, but they made it to the fall major. Some other teams didn't do very well. Like I said earlier, Misfits essentially just choked their spot in their 5th spot in the fall major. And so Vitality squeaked their way in. Maybe they do it again in the winter. I don't know. We got Williams Resolve, 0-0 Nation, Semper, and Guild. And these teams, I think they're too far away. I just don't think they're going to be able to make their way into the top 5. But what they will do is they're going to cause some problems for these teams. They're going to cause some problems for these teams that are fighting for those positions. So winter points, I mean, it's chaos at the moment. We don't have any idea what is going to happen in winter in EU. But what I will do is I will make a prediction. Way too, Europe is just way too crazy for me to have any sort of confidence for this. But we're going to make the major prediction and see what we think is going to happen for the major. And I might even get some predictions about performance at the major. So obviously we got Queso BDS. They're locked in. They're loaded, ready to rock and roll. I'm putting, like I said just a moment ago, I'm putting Dig in that 3rd spot. I'm going to go ahead and lock them in. I think Dig is going to end up with that 3rd seed. I mean, depending on how BDS performs and how Dig performs, I think they could even jump BDS for that 2 seed. For the 4th and 5th spots for Europe, I think I'm going to put EG, and I think I'm going to put Misfits in that 5th spot. Now, I may have just made a mistake and jinxed these teams. I may have just made a mistake. They may not be, I may be the problem here. But like I said, I'm going to go with EG and Misfits. We're seeing these teams are kind of on their upward trend where, like, more recently, they're taking games and series off these high-level teams, getting the better of these teams. Whereas, like K-Corp, we've had this faith, we've had this potential, and they just haven't shown it. And Endpoint, they've shown it, but as of lately, we haven't really been seeing it. So my predictions are Queso, BDS, Dig, EG, Misfits for the European region in the winter major. When we get to that major, like I said, I'll give a little bit of prediction for that or kind of what I think is going to happen when these teams get there. I see Misfits performing a little bit lackluster, and same with EG. I think both of those teams, they'll probably be happy to be there, but I don't see either of them doing super, super well at the event. I think Dig, Queso, and BDS are all going to perform very well. They all three, I feel confident are going to end up in the top 8, and could potentially even see all three in like the top 5 or something. So those are kind of my predictions or my early feelings about the European region and the major, who's going to qualify and how they're going to perform once they get to that major. And with that, that's going to conclude the show for today. I appreciate everyone being here. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we will catch you next week. Peace.